The film we are about to watch is called Darwin's Nightmare. It was written, photographed and directed by an Austrian, Rupert Sauper. It was released in the year 2005 to a flurry of awards. Before we think about the film together, let's think for a few moments about the film's title, Darwin's Nightmare. Darwin was, of course, the English naturalist, the person who discovered the idea of evolution. In Darwin's words, natural selection. Today we might say the fit survive. The animal, the plant, which is best suited to surviving the battles of nature, to surviving within its ecosystem, is going to survive and pass on its genes. So the idea of natural selection, ecosystems in a natural balance. Sauper's film is about something quite different, quite the opposite. It's a film about unnatural selection. The film was advertised with a poster, and you can see fish heads on the poster. These fish heads made me think of a social work paper which I had read, describing community work. And in this community project, a bunch of residents were cooking each other their favourite dishes. Migrants chose a dish from their homeland, and one of the migrants chose to cook fish head soup. Whilst they were eating the fish head soup, one of the residents said, "I wonder who's getting the rest of the fish." Isn't this a good question to ask? Sauper is interested in answering such questions. His film is about global inequality. It's about global injustice. The film is set on the banks of Lake Victoria in Tanzania. The fish heads in the poster come from the Nile perch fish. The rest of the fish, the expensive fillets of fish, are destined for the restaurant tables of Europe. There's an empty plane that you can see in the poster, and that plane is landing in Tanzania to pick up these fish. But is it empty? The DVD release, the German DVD release of the film, contains a minor spoiler on this point. The images of a fish and a gun, and it says at the bottom, "Fische für die Welt, Waffen für Afrika." Well, when I was 15, my economics school teacher in class taught us about global economic interdependence. And I can remember an image, a picture in my school textbooks of bananas, of grain, of banks, and of cars. This cheery picture was our global economic system. For Sauper, the global world economy, that's something quite different. It's about rotting fish and guns. So this film we're going to watch, it's set on the banks of Lake Victoria in Tanzania, but it's not about Tanzania, and it's not even about Africa. It's about us in the global north. It's about us here in Europe. I have two passports, British and German, and those two states count amongst the top 10 global arms exporters. In Germany last year, for example, that was 8 billion euros worth of arms exports. Viel Geld. And of course, tasty Barschfilet, often gebacken mit Kräutern and Gemüsen. Returning to Darwin, returning to Sauper's idea of unnatural selection, the perch, the Victoria Sea barsch, the fish in this film, is not even native to Lake Victoria. Back in the 1960s, a few scientists introduced this alien fish into the Lake Victoria ecosystem. Let's set them out, see what happens. What happens is that you get a monster. The perch, this enormous fish, eats all of the other fish in the lake, and it even swallows its own babies. We can say then that Sauper's playing with ecological metaphors here, and good for him, the metaphors have power. I was a kid growing up in the 1970s and the 1980s. This makes me one of Thatcher's generation. This makes me one of Thatcher's children. And I grew up in a society, I grew up in a culture celebrating economic markets, celebrating the fast flow of money to buy goods and services. That was the oh so natural economic order. Zauper is saying something quite provocative with his metaphor here. Maybe our own economic system today may be just as monstrous, just as grotesque as this enormous barsh fish destroying the ecosystem of that lake. So sit back and enjoy this film. I think it's one of the best documentaries of the 21st century. I'm recommending it to my social work students, and my social work students will be fascinated by the human ecology shown in this film. So watch the film, look at the pilots and the sex workers, look at the glue-sniffing street children and the fishermen living in poverty, hear the stories of the ex-soldier security guard, the pastor, and the unseen gun runners. I hope the film doesn't give you nightmares, but it might. Thank you.